Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. We open on a bright morning set. Studio lights, coffee cups, the casual banter millions tuned in for every weekday. Kelly, as familiar as a neighbor, smiles into the camera. And then something in her face changes. It's tiny at first, a catch, the way her hand rests on the desk. Viewers at home notice. Social feeds begin to buzz. In the hours that follow, clips and headlines multiply like wildfire. Kelly Ripa tearful on air, Mark Consuelos' devastating update. But headlines are only one layer. Tonight, we peel back the layers to examine how a private tremor becomes a public wave. We'll travel through uncertainty, compassion, and the surprising power of community that presses in when celebrities and people are vulnerable. But before the answers arrive, the air itself felt different, as if the world had learned to hold its breath. What if the real shock wasn't the event, but the reminder that fame doesn't insulate anyone from sorrow? For decades, Kelly and Mark have been a study in public partnership, witty, grounded, and undeniably in step. Fans who grew up watching them often feel they've been invited into a family living room. That intimacy creates an illusion of knowing. But every public persona is also a stage, laughter supervised, grief rehearsed. This point asks the audience to imagine the gap between public familiarity and private reality. When those two worlds collide, everybody feels jolted. Our narrative explores that collision gently, how a private struggle, medical, familial, or emotional, can make the most private acts of love the most public to witness. There's a particular scene, a hallway conversation that lasted less than a minute, that changed everything. We'll get to it, and you'll see why. Consider the night before the tearful morning, a phone call that rearranged the next day. Whether it's a doctor's voice, a lawyer's message, or a quiet confession, certain calls compress the world into a single sentence. That instant of compression is where people either fracture or become softer. This chapter gives the camera to the small decisions that follow, canceling a meeting, choosing to be honest on air, or shielding the children. For older viewers, it's familiar. You've been there when bad news arrived and everything else went fuzzy. The power of this point is not the details of the call, but the emotional mathematics, what you protect and what you reveal. And when they stepped onto the set the next morning, they had already chosen. But which choice would the world see? Live television is unforgiving and luminous. To speak about a private wound on live TV is to hand a lantern to millions. In this segment, we consider why someone would choose openness over silence. There's courage in creating trust through transparency, and there's strategy in controlling a narrative that will inevitably be shaped by rumor. We discuss how sharing can be both a relief and an obligation, to fans, to colleagues, to one's own sense of truth. For our audience, recall moments when you had to explain something difficult to loved ones, the exhaustion and the liberation. But sharing also invites a tidal wave of responses. Which ones will heal and which will wound further? The camera lingers. Kelly's voice trembles. For a generation raised on composed composure, seeing a confident public figure cry can feel destabilizing. This point examines the micro gestures, a hand rubbing at an eye, a colleague's gentle touch on the shoulder, and why they matter. We connect these gestures to memories many in our audience will have, holding a friend when words fail, wiping tears in a quiet kitchen. Tears translate across ages. They are the human shorthand for "I need support." But tears are only the beginning. What follows is often action, and in this story, the action surprises everybody. Social media can be loud and unfiltered. Within minutes, textureless outrage mixes with deep well-wishes. This scene tracks the arc of public reaction: shock, speculation, conspiracy, then, remarkably, a swell of solidarity. People post memories, a favorite Kelly laugh, Mark's best role, a story about kindness in a grocery line. For older viewers who may prefer letters to tweets, it's a modern version of community response. Swift, messy, but often heartfelt. We highlight anecdotes: a fan who flew in to hand-deliver flowers, a viewer who organized a local vigil,
These acts show how celebrity can galvanize real-world compassion. Yet not all responses are kind. Rumors will arise. And here, a surprising twist. A rumor that seemed credible at first would later unravel in an unexpected way. Backstage, away from cameras, a family gathers. They sit in soft light and speak in careful tones. This point invites the audience into that sacred family sphere, the exchange of practical plans, the coordination of support, the small jokes that make the room breathe. For viewers in their 60s, the scene will feel familiar, the domestic choreography that follows a crisis. We emphasize the role of small rituals, tea at midnight, a particular blanket, a well-worn joke. In times of crisis, these rituals anchor us to ordinary life. One family ritual would ripple outward into the headlines, not because it was intentional, but because truth sometimes walks into the light on its own. Stories in Hollywood have velocity. A whisper becomes a headline becomes a trending topic. In this segment, we disassemble that machine with
Cynicism,
compassion.
why reporters chase details, how outlets balance respect and ratings, and how easily a small misquote inflates into a myth. For our older viewers who remember when news traveled by paper, it's a lesson in how speed changed responsibility. We also explore the sometimes necessary role of the press in holding power to account, while acknowledging the harm caused by gossip. Cliffhanger. And yet, amid the noise, one credible source emerged who would change the entire arc of the story. A childhood friend, an industry colleague, someone who watched both Kelly and Mark before they were famous. Their testimony lands differently. It's not a headline, it's a human voice recounting ordinary acts of generosity and quiet strength. This point explores how personal testimony can reset a narrative, offering texture and restraint. For the audience, it's a moment that brings relief. People are multidimensional, and a friend's story can restore nuance. Cliffhanger. And this friend shared an unexpected detail, a small event years ago that, once revealed, reframed how we understood the present moment. Many of us have sat in waiting rooms, learning that some answers arrive slowly and others not at all. In this segment, we treat medical uncertainty with tenderness. We won't invent diagnoses or outcomes. Instead, we focus on the experience, how families learn to live with ambiguity, how they balance hope and planning, and how love becomes daily caregiving. For viewers in their 60s, this will resonate deeply, the double-edged sword of knowledge and the dignity of being present. Cliffhanger. And in the middle of this uncertainty, a simple, heroic gesture would remind everyone what really matters. Even in the darkest times, humor can be the light that makes the load bearable. We show how Kelly and Mark, both known for their wit, used humor not to mask pain, but to create breathing room. For older viewers who treasure a well-timed joke, this will feel like a familiar balm. We talk about the way a shared laugh can reset a room, how even a brief chuckle can translate into resilience. Cliffhanger. But the world would misinterpret one such joke, turning levity into a controversial soundbite. Here's how they handled it. Misquotes happen. A sentence taken out of context can alter an impression. This chapter is about correcting the record gracefully, issuing clarifications, refusing to escalate a minor blip, and using the mistake as a teaching moment about empathy. For our audience, many of whom lived through eras of different media, it's a reminder that not every viral moment is accurate. Cliffhanger. The correction came with an apology that surprised everyone, not for its content, but for its humility. Long partnerships show their true colors in crisis. This point celebrates the choreography of mutual support. One partner handling logistics, the other making sure the kids eat dinner. The way a nod communicates more than a paragraph. We spotlight the rituals that strengthen couples when the world is unstable. Shared history, private jokes, a handshake that says, "I'm here." For viewers who have navigated decades together, these images will be familiar and comforting. Cliffhanger.
A decision made in that moment to cancel a planned appearance became an example to many about prioritizing family over fame. When public figures have children, there's a tender responsibility to protect young hearts. This segment explores how parents create a buffer, limiting exposure, answering questions with honesty appropriate to age, and wrapping ordinary comforts around kids who might sense more than they hear. For older viewers who have been parents or grandparents, this will land as a poignant portrait. Cliffhanger, an image of a child's small gesture, a drawing left on a kitchen table, would later circulate online and remind the world of innocence. We revisit fans, this time focusing on the heartwarming actions. Fundraisers, messages of encouragement, local watch parties turned into letter-writing campaigns. The fan community reoriented from speculation to support. This shows the best of modern fandom, when people choose to help rather than to judge. For audience members who value community, it's a gentle reminder that people can respond with kindness even when they're afraid. Cliffhanger. One fan's story, a small act of kindness that created a chain reaction, will prove that compassion can be contagious.